Astrocast. Today is Thursday, August 21st, 2025. We got about 3% left of a waning crescent moon. Just a tiny little sliver left in the sky, if you happen to get up early enough to see it. Thank you for tuning in this week. My name is Rue. Thanks for joining as always. Let's see. I've got quite a lot of stuff to catch you guys up on that's happened in the last week. I mean, it's been hectic because as I mentioned on last week's show, I will be heading on a dark sky trip this weekend. So to give you just a little bit more information, I'm heading up to Wisconsin and meeting up with some friends. And we are going to be staying at another friend's cabin. So he has a cabin in very beautiful dark skies in, I believe it's like a Bortle 3 or 4, if I'm not mistaken. He sent me shots of Milky Way that he gets over the lake, and they're just absolutely gorgeous. So I'm very, very much looking forward to that. Get to meet some new people that I'm very much looking forward to. And we'll have more to come on that in the near future. But I'm leaving on Saturday. I wanted to leave on Friday originally, but unfortunately work is work. And because of work, I couldn't leave on Friday because, well, we don't need to get into specifics. I couldn't leave on Friday. So I ended up having to leave on Saturday. And I'll be coming back Tuesday night. So I should have 3 nights. The weather report is looking pretty good so far. I haven't checked on it today, but our host, Mark, has been keeping me informed. And he says that it's looking pretty good. So fingers crossed that we get, at least one really good night. I would hate to bring all this gear up there and, not get to use it. But I understand that's part of the game too. We do what we can and we take advantage when we can. I will tell you that I am very much enjoying this Pelican case that I purchased a little over a month ago, and I started packing it in earnest this week. And I folded the AM3 down to 0 degrees, so it's like a perfectly flat surface, as compact as it can get. And that packs in very well. And then I was able to easily get my ASCAR refractor, the SQA55 in there, along with my camera. I was able to leave the autofocuser attached, which is nice. So I'll put a photo of the fully packed case up on the Facebook page. And if you guys want to check it out, you can, just to give you an idea of, the kind of gear that you can fit in a case like that, which I'd never really considered getting a Pelican before because I always thought they were just like outrageously expensive. I knew they were good. Obviously, they're good cases, but I didn't think they'd be good enough to justify the kind of premium that they were demanding. But as it turns out, you can find them for, pretty affordable prices if you look around and you're patient. So you just gotta, be patient, know when to jump, etc. Pay attention to prices, look for sales. I don't know if that same one is still on sale on B&H Photo. I'll check, and if I remember, I'll put it in the show notes. But I mentioned it on the show a few weeks ago, so hopefully you heard about that. So let's see. The Patreon, man, oh man, has it been busy. We keep getting new members, and it's so awesome to have all of you guys there. I just want to once again say thank you to all of our Patreon members. You guys are great. Thanks for becoming really members of the Astrocast family is the best way I can put it, because it sure feels that way in our chats in the Discord. So if you'd like to join us, you can always do that at patreon.com/the Astrocast. So last weekend, I got to do something that I have been trying to do for, 4 years now, maybe. It's been a while. So I am a very happily married man. Been married for 11 years and about a month, 3 weeks to be specific. And I got to marry my high school crush, which is just awesome. And we get along very, very well. Really never fight for the most part. We might have little squabbles every now and then, but pretty much everyone we know says we're the happiest married couple that they know. And I tend to agree with that. But one thing that I had not been able to do up until last weekend was get my wife to go with me to check out the Milky Way one night. And no fault of hers. Everybody has different interests, and hers do not include sitting out under the night sky for hours at a time in the middle of the night. And I can't blame her for that. I know it's not for everyone, but I did, want her to get a chance to at least experience it and see, what makes it so special to us, to, hopefully let her understand. With me going on this dark sky trip, and I'm going to be flying up, and I'm going by myself. She can't come. Unfortunately, she's got to stay home and take care of the pets. I figured this was the perfect time for us to go and check it out. So I was watching the weather report, and Sunday night actually looked quite promising. We had a fairly busy weekend. But on Sunday, I kind of cornered her and said, "Hey, you're in a good mood. Do you want to go check out the Milky Way tonight?" And because we've talked about it for a long, long time, but we just haven't had a good opportunity. So we went down to my in-laws and had dinner with them. It was great. And there was a point where I had 2 cocktails and I had eaten a big dinner, and I was like, man, I don't know, going Milky Way hunting tonight might not happen. But I relaxed, let the itis wear off and regrouped. And at first I thought, why don't we go somewhere where we can be alone, like any of the dark sky sites that I find. Then I was like, I probably shouldn't bring my wife to a graveyard in the middle of the night for her first dark sky session. So after much consideration, I decided the observatory would be the best place to go. So we went down to Gale Rigsby Observatory on Sunday evening. And it's funny, when you're driving down to the Charlotte Amateur Astronomer Club observatory, you go from Charlotte, which, as you know, or may not know, it's a pretty big city. It's not New York or anything, but it is, I think, between Atlanta and New York on the eastern seaboard, it's the biggest city. So pretty big city. So you drive to the southern part of the city, and then you get on this kind of like back road highway that's just a 2-lane road, and you drive for pretty much an hour with a couple of turns, and you eventually get to South Carolina, and then you're kind of like in the middle of nowhere, essentially. There's still houses and stuff, but not like big neighborhoods. And every time I make that trip, I always am worried about deer, because this particular area is just like overrun with deer. They are everywhere. I don't think that there's like too many people that are doing hunting in that area, and therefore like the numbers are just not ever cold. And the population just gets bigger and bigger and bigger if it's left unchecked, which, isn't like the biggest deal in the world. But when you're, driving home from the observatory at 4:00 in the morning and you're very, very tired, it can be really dangerous. And while we were driving to the observatory, it was just before sundown, and, starting to get dark. And sure enough, we had a mama deer and a baby deer jump right out in front of the car. Now, I was not going 55 miles an hour, which is the speed limit on that road. I was going about 35 because I know to expect these things. And I avoided it. They were able to safely cross the street, which is great. But it makes you realize why so many of the guys down there who do own their own observatory buildings have a bed in their warm room because they they like to not drive home at 4 o'clock in the morning and just wait until the sun's up when they can, safely get home. But there's been just countless times that I've come home from the observatory really, really late at night. And it's always like such a adventure because you just never know how many deer you're going to see. You're guaranteed to see some deer. You will see them. It's just a matter of how many will you see and will they jump right out in front of you? So anyway, we got down to the observatory and there weren't a lot of people there. There was one person on the giant Newtonian scope that you need stairs to get to the top of to view the eyepiece if it's pointed up to the meridian. And I said hi to him, and then I went down to the main pad that everybody can set up on. And Bill was there. He's an older gentleman, longtime member of the club, super nice guy. I've seen him many, many times down there. He actually owns his own building down there, so he's there quite frequently. And he was also working on some Milky Way stuff that night. So being that I knew I wasn't going to be staying for a super long time, and I knew obviously with Jess being there, I knew she would probably have a good time, but she wouldn't want to sit out there for 5 hours. So I only brought the Move Shoot Move, which is a star tracker. I've talked about it on the show a few times. I've had it for, I don't know, the whole summer now, essentially. And man, I can't find a bad thing to say about that tracker. It sets up so quickly. And if you have the wedge that it comes with, it's just incredibly easy to polar align. It holds its polar alignment well. I was doing 60-second tracked exposures with my 16 millimeter Canon RF lens, and they all came out perfect. I love that thing. I highly, highly, highly recommend it to anyone who is looking for a super portable setup. I'm planning on bringing it with me to this dark sky trip. So obviously I'm bringing the ASCAR refractor. I'm bringing the AM3 mount, which, by the way, excellent tracking. Whenever I went out and did the test on it, I was getting like 0.38 on my guiding. And that was not even with like a phenomenal polar alignment. I was under 1 minute, but like normally I like get under 15 seconds, under 10 seconds, somewhere in that area. But with just like a really quick polar alignment, I was getting like 0.38, like no counterweights. Like that's just unreal to me. And I love the sound of that mount slewing. There's just something about it. It sounds so good. I really like the build quality of it. I was able to run it off the ASI Air, which is nice. I know everyone says you shouldn't do that, but I've done it with, I think, every mount that I've owned, and I've never had a problem yet. So, until I do have a problem, I'll continue to. I don't know if you can give me like a good reason why I should not be doing that. I am definitely open to hearing it. Feel free to email me at ruastrocast@gmail.com and we can talk about it. But it does seem to work fine. So, I actually got, the little, the cold shoe cold shoe adapter, for the side of the M3, because it's got a couple of mounting holes right there on the saddle, and you can attach the ASI Air directly to it. And that just cleans up your cable management and makes everything a little bit more tidy. So that is really super cool. I also, speaking of tidying things up, when I was packing for this trip, I got my, the little cases that ZWO cameras come in. They're the soft padded cases, and it fits just the camera. And, after you set up your rig, you probably never even look at the bag again. But, if you're traveling and you actually need to break down your rig, it's good to have. So I got that out. And I realized I didn't have the like lens cap, I guess you would say, for the camera. I think it's actually a dust cover technically. But anyway, I found a 3D print file for M42, M48, and M52, I want to say it is, the next step up from 48. printed out 2 of them. They work great. So that was really, really cool. I posted the link for that on the Facebook page, but I will put the link to the 3D print file in the show notes. I also have another one I want to tell you about later, but let me get back to the observatory. So we got down there. I set up the move, shoot, move. Jess is sitting in my fold out chair, looking up, and she's just seeing satellite after satellite after satellite, which is a cool thing to see if you're not accustomed to it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still think it's cool to see a satellite flying overhead. I just wish there weren't 15,000 of them is all. And I think we can all agree on that. But it was still, not, astronomical darkness by any means when we were done setting up. So we're kind of sitting there and waiting in anticipation. And Bill was asking for some, troubleshooting steps with his Canon camera that he had borrowed from his wife. And I was doing my best to help him, but it was a DSLR Canon, which I have owned in the past, but I've been shooting mirrorless for, 5 years now. So it's not often that I play with Canon DSLRs. The menus are still very similar to what we have, and so are the controls. But man, he was having just some weird, funky issues with this camera. And it reminded me to let you guys know something. We were talking about, Milky Way tips last week. And I just want to say one of the worst things you can do for astrophotography is to go out on like a dark sky trip or a Milky Way shoot and not know your camera inside and out, because you will run into issues. It's not if, it's when, because if you don't know that camera inside and out and have your custom mode set where you're going to do a 30-second exposure at f3.5, 16 millimeter lens. We're going to set ISO 1600. We'll have a 2-second delay. Like, you need to know all of these things like muscle memory, because if you don't, you're going to have a very, very frustrating time. And I don't know what it is, but when I'm not at home, like in my comfort place, I have an even harder time because I'm just kind of like out of my environment. And I could tell that Bill was struggling with those issues because he kept, leaning back on, this is my wife's camera. And I'm like, hey, I get it. I understand. If it's not your camera that you use every day, you're going to have trouble. It's dark out. You don't know all the buttons and the dials. And believe me when I say full frame Canon DSLRs have a lot of buttons and dials on them. So he was running into weird issues like half pressing the shutter and the screen wasn't turning on at all. And then we had a autofocus versus manual focus issue. We had an exposure length issue, just like issue after issue after issue. He finally got it fixed and was able to properly expose several Milky Way photos. They did come out great. And I think by the time I had gotten all of my gear set up, and he had done the same, the Milky Way was finally starting to come out. And man, it was super cool to see. And I was trying to think, like, I don't know if I had seen it this summer yet, because it's been so cloudy and so rainy and so smoky. And like, we even made that, dark sky trip me and my sister did all the way up to Virginia back in June, or was it May? Might have been May or June. And we weren't able to see the Milky Way because of the wildfires, even though the moon wasn't out. So like, it is a really, really special thing to be able to witness it. But when you get to witness it with someone that you love and care about for the first time, it just makes it all the more special. So we didn't stay too late. I was doing 60-second exposures. I stopped down the lens slightly to f3.5 just to sharpen up the stars. That's always a good thing to do. I know I mentioned it before, but stop down your lens just a little bit, because you will notice that the stars come out much, much nicer. And I think it was ISO 1600, and again, 60-second exposures. And I was using the Shutter app again. I gotta say, I've used that app for quite a while now, and I can definitely recommend it. So if you go on the App Store, and it might be on the Android Play Store as well, or Google Play Store, it's called Shutter. And it's a really great tool for astrophotographers, because it lets you basically manually set all of the controls from your camera. And then you can pick how many shots you want to do. You can set it to unlimited, and it can just, expose for you, which is a great thing, obviously. So I got done. We got a really good view of the Milky Way for, I'd say, 45 minutes or so. And then like the whole sky changed. It was still clear out, but the humidity just got awful, like instantly. And the seeing just was destroyed. Like where we were able to make out some fine details of the Milky Way, it just became like a really light smudge after the humidity increased. And at that point, I knew it was pretty much over for the night, unfortunately. So I still had one thing left to do, though. I had been taking, obviously shots of the core of the Milky Way, and I wanted to make sure that I could commemorate the moment, since it was the first time that my wife really went stargazing with me, outside of a meteor shower that we did a few years ago. I think she went with me on that. So I broke down my rig, and I put the camera back on the tripod and moved it back about 15 feet from where we were standing. And, if you don't know, this is the process of doing like a foreground shot, and you don't have to do it when it's blue hour being like the hour before astronomical darkness, when it's still somewhat light outside. That's when a lot of people like to take their foreground shots, but you don't have to do it then. You can do it when it's dark out. And if you have something like a red headlamp that you can set down on the ground behind you or your subject, then you can, make it that much better just by lighting up your subject a little bit. And then if you want to adjust the light, you can always do that in post, because you can change colors on Lightroom. So if you want to make it look more natural, you can. If you want to leave the red, you can, etc. But I had Jess stand about 10 feet in front of the camera, and I walked up beside her and put my arm around her. And then I exposed the shutter for, I want to say 10 seconds. And I'd stopped it down a little bit, just to sharpen it up again and give me a wider focal plane, which is obviously important to have for a foreground shot. And I think it came out really good. So I ended up coming home. Obviously, we got home, I think around 11:30, and the next morning it was time to go ahead and stack those Milky Way photos. And stacking Milky Way photos. So I ran into some interesting stuff in PixInsight that I want to speak briefly on, but I don't think I'm going to get like too detailed into it, because it might end up being like a whole tutorial, and I'll tell you why in a second. So anyway, when it was time to stack the photos, there's a lot of different ways that you can stack Milky Way photos. I personally don't use PixInsight for Milky Way photo stacking, because there is a plate solving that needs to happen when you're using PixInsight. And if you can't plate solve the image, the stack won't work properly. At least I haven't found out a way to make it work properly. If you know how to, please let me know. But I use an app on my MacBook, actually. So the Mac has an excellent app called Starry Landscape Stacker. And they have a free version and a paid version. I have the paid version. It's not super expensive. I think I paid like $40 for it, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a really, really great application that just, it works phenomenally for stacking specifically, wide field Milky Way shots. It's got a really easy interface to use. You can basically paint the sky area and then it aligns and stacks everything for you and lets you save the stacked image. And from there, you can put it wherever you want. So normally for me, what I've been doing in the past is taking that stacked image and then bringing it into Photoshop and then, masking it all off. And then I'll lay my foreground on top after I've edited the photo and, got the Milky Way just how I want it. But I wanted to try PixInsight again because PixInsight has some tools within it that can be super helpful when you're doing Milky Way photos. And yet that plate solve can still be quite a pain in the butt to achieve while you're working with Milky Way photos. So the thing that I was mentioning earlier that I might do a tutorial on, I don't know. You guys let me know. If it's something that you want to hear more about it, let me know. And I will take a lot of notes next time I do it because I was just trying to bumble my way through and looking up different sources and trying different things. Anyway, I found a way to plate solve properly with pretty good success, actually, in PixInsight for Milky Way photos. And in the past, I have had nothing but failure when trying to do that. And I found out it's a combination of a lot of different things. At the same time, I would try to, just upload the photo to astrometry.net. No luck there either. They would just fail. But I was able to do it. And there were a lot of different reasons. But like I say, if you guys are interested, let me know. And I will see if I can put together an episode of that. But after I got the plate solve done, I was able to immediately run Blur Exterminator, which just, that's so nice to run on a Milky Way image because no matter how good, in my opinion, your star tracker is and, how great your glass is and whether you got it stopped down or not, you can always have better looking stars in Milky Way core, in my opinion, than what comes out of the camera. And Blur Exterminator is just so good at doing that, in my opinion. So that's fantastic. But the real, you don't need PixInsight for this tool because there's a separate standalone version of it. But Graxpert, using that on a Milky Way photo is awesome. If you've never done a gradient removal on the Milky Way, it really brings out a lot of the fainter details that you may have missed. You got to be careful with it because you can go overboard and end up, removing some fainter details. If I was in a darker location, for example, then I probably would have been able to pick up the blue horse head. I didn't do long enough total integration to even get it. And like I say, it was humid out. The seeing wasn't great, etc. But Blur Exterminator, you can do a star reduction, which is super nice. The obviously auto stretching, if you want to do that, you can make adjustments. I just use the curves tool and adjusted it because it doesn't take much when you have like a stacked CR3 file with 30 exposures or however much you get. It's already gonna have color in it, so it doesn't take a whole lot to get it where it needs to be stretching wise. But you get great results in PixInsight. You just can't deny it. So once I finished up there, I exported it to Lightroom, and I did a little bit of a color balance tweak. So I like kind of depending on how the photo is and what time of year it is. Sometimes I'll go a little cooler with my Milky Way shots, which I'm a big fan of. And sometimes I'll go a little warmer with my Milky Way shots. And this one I actually went a little warmer with, and I think it came out better for it. So the colors get a little redder. There's more orange, as opposed to the more purplish and blue kind of hues you get with a cooler framed Milky Way photo. And it came out great. So, once I had that done, it was just a matter of loading up both images in Photoshop, the foreground image, obviously, and then the actual Milky Way image. And there's a million tutorials online that can tell you how to remove the foreground from a shot and then place it on top of your Milky Way photo. The tricky part is putting them together in such a way that looks natural, because you don't want them to look like they have completely different color schemes going on. Like, you wouldn't want to do a really cool exposed foreground image and then have a super warm Milky Way, because it's going to be like, what is this? I don't know what I'm looking at here. But if you can really kind of match up the two, play around in Lightroom with both images until you get them, looking pretty good for how you want, then it can work out just really, really great. And, if you have any issues where, trees get clipped or it's not wide enough, et cetera, Photoshop's got, obviously a million different tools that you can use to make that work. Like, for example, I had a couple of hot pixels that showed up in the final stacked image. And since they were clipped, it just looked like black splotches on one piece of the Milky Way photo. Luckily, it was all the way near the edge, way outside of the core. It wasn't in any of the nebulosity or anything like that. So I used a clone stamp and just covered up that one tiny little area. No one's ever going to know. You wouldn't know either if you looked at it, because it was just a tiny little spot. But for quick touch-ups like that, it's an excellent use case for Photoshop. So now, given I realize that I'm talking about a ton of different software here, all pretty much paid applications, there are free versions of everything out there. Like, if you don't like using Photoshop, GIMP is an excellent open source alternative. It might take a little bit more of a learning curve, but honestly, Photoshop has a huge learning curve. So it just depends on where you started and what you want to learn, really. Cyril obviously is a good free stand-in for PixInsight. I haven't personally used Cyril before. I have downloaded it and looked at it, but I've never actually processed one of my images from front to back in Cyril. The only thing I haven't found a real true open source or free analog for is Lightroom, because Lightroom, it's super easy to use once you learn how the tool works. It's extremely flexible. I love the interface, and I don't even use Lightroom Classic. I use the CC version. I learned on the CC version. So when I go to the classic Lightroom, I don't know how to work anything, and it drives me nuts. Believe me, I've tried to, because every tutorial that you'll ever look up on the internet is going to be from Lightroom Classic. And that's just how it is. And that's okay. But I prefer the CC version personally. The only thing that I don't like about Lightroom, besides the cost, obviously, is the way that Adobe handles the cloud storage. I hate the way that it's set up, because unless you are really good about culling your photos and then backing them up to an external drive. Like me personally, I like to open Lightroom and view several years of photos that I've taken, but there might be, 30 shots of one, bird shoot of the same bird. If they were all, good shots out of 200 that I took, I don't want to remove those from Lightroom, but they're going to count against my cloud storage. And if you're like me and you take a whole lot of photos, over time, that's going to fill up, and you end up buying the 100 gigabytes that they offer for a couple bucks more. And then that fills up. And before long, you're just like, I guess I'm going to export the entire library to an external drive and then start over. And that's what I've done a couple of times now. But for all its faults, it is very easy to use, and it's a very powerful tool, and I definitely enjoy it. So I will definitely share that Milky Way image, the final one that I took. I'll probably make it the cover for this week's artwork. If you listen on certain podcast apps, you'll see the cover art for the episode. If you listen on YouTube, it's right there as the thumbnail, obviously. So let me know what you think. If you have any thoughts on it, you can always go to our Facebook page. Just search for the Astrocast and you'll see our logo pop right up. I posted it there, but I'll also, like I say, I'll put it on the show notes. Let me guys know what you think. You can go to email me at ruastrocast@gmail.com and let me know what you think. So I did another thing too, camera related, and I always share all of my camera related stuff with you guys. So this will be no different. As you may know, I have been trying to get into film cameras over the last year or so. Way back in, I want to say the springtime, I bought the Pentax Auto 110, which is a really, really cool, really tiny film camera that does negatives that are like the size of your pinky. And it's a super cool, it's 110 type film, not to be confused with like medium format. No, it's very, very small. And I've enjoyed it. And I bought, I think 3 rolls of the 110 film when I bought this camera, and they were finally done. So I'd finished using all 3 of the rolls. I know that seems like a long time for 3 rolls of film, but one of the things about film photography is you don't take as many photos. It's not like with your iPhone or your mirrorless camera where you just, snap everything that you see. You really do pick and choose your moments a lot more when you're shooting film, because obviously you have a finite amount of frames that you can capture. But it definitely got me more interested, and as cute and adorable as this camera is, it's not the most practical, and it doesn't really have any settings on it. You pretty much just, you focus it and you press the button. That's it. And it auto exposes, it picks the shutter time, it picks the aperture. It does everything for you. So I knew I wanted to get a 35 millimeter film camera, and I've been looking for quite a while. Prices have been all over the place. What I should have done is bought one last year, because I remember looking on like eBay last year, and the cameras that I'm going to talk about, you could get for like right around $100, if not significantly less, depending on the situation and the condition. Before all these tariffs started, you could go on eBay and you could actually buy a lot of these older film cameras from Japan, and they would have really cheap shipping. And if you know anything about the Japanese culture, they take very, very good care of their possessions and will literally pass them down from generation to generation, because they don't believe in waste, and they do believe in fixing things and using them. What a concept, right? So if you ever go to Japan, I haven't been myself, but I've got friends who've been, you'll notice if you go into like a thrift goods store, for example, that everything is in very, very good condition. So these are the kind of cameras that you could find online for less than $100 and then have it shipped to you from Japan. And you've got like a 40-year-old camera that looks brand new. Like, how incredible is that? But unfortunately, the combination of film reaching like an all-time high in interest now, because it's retro and cool, that combined with the tariffs have made it very difficult and expensive to go that route. So if you want to find the camera that was $100 last year, it's easily $200 this year, and that's before it arrives at your door and you pay the tariffs to whoever brings it to you. So that was kind of out of the question for me. I didn't want to go that route. I didn't want, things are constantly changing. I didn't even know how much the total price would be, because again, I don't know what the tariffs are in Japan right now. Did it get delayed? Did it not, et cetera? Anyway, I don't want to get into that. So I thought to myself, like, if I could find one in a local store, and we have a few photography stores here in Charlotte, then I would certainly consider getting one. And last weekend on Saturday, me and my wife were out and about, and we happened to be in the shopping center where a local camera store is. I'm not going to name them, but we go to this area a lot. There's a Barnes and Noble bookstore in the area, and we always go in and get books. By the way, picked up Cujo by Stephen King. And I've always wanted to read it. I actually read his new short story collection earlier this year. And there is a part 2 of Cujo in there called Rattlesnakes. And it's the best book in the collection. So I knew I had to get around to reading Cujo. And I had just finished The Dead Zone. And come to find out, he wrote Cujo right after The Dead Zone. And you can tell because the very first page of Cujo is a direct reference to The Dead Zone. God, I love Stephen King. I can't get enough of it. Anyway, excellent book so far. But anyhow, we were in this shopping center. We were heading right by the camera store. So I said, you mind if I run in and have a look? I had a little bit of money in my pocket that I gotten from my mother and mother-in-law for my birthday. And I figured, what the heck, let's go have a look. So I go in, and the same camera. So first of all, this particular store does not put price tags on anything. And it drives me nuts because, like, I don't want to have to shout across the store every time I pick something up and say, how much is this? How much is this? How much is this? I'm not like the most frugal guy in the world, but like, I don't want to just say I'm buying this and not know how much it costs. I don't think that's unreasonable. But at the same time, if I'm browsing, it'd be good to know how much stuff is, So anyway, they had in a glass case up front a bunch of the retro cameras, like 35 millimeter film cameras. They had some Nikons, they had some Canons, and they had a few others like a Minolta, stuff like that. And I was open to getting a Nikon, actually. I like some of the old F models that are built like tanks, but ultimately I really wanted a Canon just because I'm a Canon guy at heart. And they had a Canon AE1, which is a 35 millimeter film camera that was built, I want to say, it was 1976 when it came out. So, definitely an older camera, older than me, in fact. I'm not going to say how much older. I'm just kidding. It's about 8 years older than me when it was originally released. And it's at the time, it was very much equivalent to buying like an R5 of today. It was very expensive for its time. I think like close to over $3,000 if you adjusted for inflation. But its kind of claim to fame was that it was pretty much the first mainstream consumer camera that had a microprocessor in it. So it had a auto exposure shutter priority mode where it would basically select the f-stop for you. And all you have to do is select what shutter speed you want. So it's a super cool camera. It's very historical. It's got like that classic camera look where if you ask somebody to draw a picture of a camera, they'd probably draw something that looks like an AE1. And, it was like the thing to have back in the late 70s and early 80s. I think they stopped making them in around 1984. And that was right around when the EF glass was starting to become popular. The EF mount being Canon's prior to RF mount type lenses. And this camera took what was known as the FD mount. So FD mount was first, then the EF mount, and now the RF mount, just to give you an idea of the timing that we're talking about here. Another super cool thing about the AE1, which is not an uncommon thing for older cameras, but I knew it was a must-have for me, was it has bulb mode built into it. So, it can go 1/1000th of a second to 2 seconds for its regular exposures. And then it also has a bulb mode, which you can plug in a old school shutter release cable to and actually expose for as long as you want. Obviously, I don't need to tell you that I will definitely use that feature if I were to get this camera. So I was looking at it and I asked the guy if I could see it and just asking basic questions. And I say, so how much do you want for this? And he proceeded to tell me that the camera I was holding, which mind you, not 1 year ago, you could find for under $100 on eBay. They were selling it for $450, which really kind of blew my mind, honestly, because even at the inflated prices, I was fairly certain that was like a ridiculous price. So I handed it back to the guy. I said, thanks so much. I asked him about a couple other cameras. They were also way overpriced, or at least I thought. So I said, oh well, forget about it. I don't mind splurging occasionally, but I do mind like getting ripped off. I'm just going to say it. I won't do that. I don't care how bad I want something. I'm not going to pay way over what you would normally pay for it, even in situations like this, because, well, anyway, I'll tell you why. So earlier today, when I was out and about doing some errands, I happened to stop in to another local camera store here in Charlotte, and I will gladly call them out. The name of the store is the Photo Outfitters. They're on Monroe Road in Charlotte, North Carolina, and a couple of guys named Tony and Cannon actually run the place. And yes, his name is actually Cannon. Anyhow, I walked in, and this was the place I actually bought my Auto 110 from earlier this year, and started talking to Tony. I dropped off those 3 rolls of 110 film to have them developed, and went over to his case, and he had a lot of new gear in there, which was really cool to see. And there it was, the Canon AE1 with the same lens, the 50 millimeter f1.8. He also had the all black version, which is the 1.2. And it was $200. So literally less than half the price of what the other guy was charging. And there is not a single camera that comes through that place that he doesn't completely take apart, repair everything that needs repaired, and then puts it back together. He won't sell it if it doesn't work. You know what I mean? The camera itself, I had to have it at that price. It was definitely in the range that I was looking to pay. And it's just phenomenal. It's a really, really great camera. So I grabbed 3 rolls of film. I got a local company here, Aurora 400 is the kind. So with film cameras, you may or may not know, but you actually, when you choose your film, the film determines the ISO number. And you actually, on my camera, the AE1, you actually have a dial where you select the ISO, and you have to select that before you start shooting, and you can't change it after, or your photos will end up horribly under or overexposed depending on what you select. Whereas with like a modern mirrorless camera or DSLR, obviously you just select your ISO on the fly, but with film, you can't change it. So you pick, I mean, you can change it, but you can't change it on the fly. So I've got this roll of Aurora 400. I selected 400 on the ISO dial, loaded the film up, and I will not touch that particular number again until I put in my next roll of film, and only if it's a different ISO. So does that make sense? And the other ones I got are Portra 800, which is really cool Kodak portrait film. It's legendary. And then I also got I got one roll of Ilford, and they actually make a kind of crazy high ISO film for film cameras at 3200. But as you can imagine, that is what I am going to use to shoot some astrophotography on film with. So I've been thinking long and hard about how I want to do this. And there's obviously so many different ways that you can go about doing something like this. But for me, I will just simply be using my move, shoot, move tracker on a, nice sturdy tripod. I will use the Ilford 3200 ISO film, and I will use that shutter release cable that I was able to purchase at Photo Outfitters along with the new AE1, new old AE1, I should say, because this camera's old as I am. If it was built in 84, I'm going to try and see if I can find out what year my model was built in. I haven't looked super closely all over the camera. So I don't know if they have like a year marker on them somewhere. But I'm definitely going to look into that. Another really cool thing about it is it opens up a whole new world of retro lenses for me to try out. I'm like so stoked for that. Just because there's a lot of like old FD mount glass out there that is dirt cheap, obviously, but not necessarily bad. You can get some really cool shots with it. So obviously I will still cherish my R5. Like I'm not going to use this for, wildlife photography or anything like that. But like when I'm hanging out with family and stuff like that, what's cooler than getting a film shot of, your family at dinner or something like that? I just don't think you can beat that. So yeah, the move, shoot, move, along with the AE1 and a shutter release cable, it should give me a pretty good experience. And obviously, it'll probably be a little bit because I'll probably shoot all 3 rolls of this film before I go and get it developed. But when I do develop those photos, I will make sure to share some of them with you guys online. And another thing to that point, if you are thinking about doing something similar, I just wanted to mention that I talked about the dust covers earlier for your ZWO cameras. My 3D printer has been getting a workout lately because I've been finding so many useful things to print. And I found one other really super cool thing. So somebody designed a perfect laser holder for the AM3 or AM5 mount. So earlier I mentioned that I mounted the ASI Air to the saddle. Well, those same 2 little M4, I believe they are, screw holes. This laser pointer holder has 2 screw holes on the bottom of it that you can directly attach it to your AM3 or AM5, pop in a laser pointer, and then very quickly polar align your mount. So if you wanted to do, let's say, tracked Milky Way photography, or you just wanted to really simplify things one night and not have to worry about breaking out the ASI Air and all the other gear, you could just polar align your AM3 or AM5 in literally, a few seconds using a laser pointer, and then put your mirrorless camera on top of it and Bob's your uncle. So you could shoot all night with that. And it's a really cool way to use your gear that you otherwise wouldn't think to. So if you're interested in that, the laser pointer holder or the dust caps, I'll put the link to both of those in the show notes. You can also find video I posted earlier on the Facebook page of the dust cap. So make sure to follow us over there. We've got quite a few people following on the Facebook page now. But if everybody who listens went over there and gave us a follow, then we'd probably increase our listenership quite a bit, because that's how the old algorithm works. So I will also, I'd love to ask you guys if you have friends or family members or even just acquaintances that have an interest in astronomy or astrophotography. please share the show with them, because we're continuing to grow our audience, and we are growing. We're getting into that kind of phase where we're coming up on 2 years of being a podcast, and most podcasts are done, well before they get to 10 episodes. And, we're getting near 100. We still got a little ways to go, but we're getting there, and we're going to get there come hell or high water. So definitely share it with a friend or family member if you have one. And I would very, very much appreciate that. So I do sadly have to say that because of the dark sky trip, plus me having to return to work the day after I get back, and I'm not getting back until late at night, there won't be a new episode next week. So I apologize for that. But I am working. I kind of got a little side project I'm working on for the Astrocast. It's an episode, but it's a very special episode that I'm kind of working on and slowly putting together for you guys. So I hope to have that out before the end of this year. It's kind of probably the biggest project that I've done so far. So, look forward to that. And we are going to also kind of have a big announcement on the next episode. So obviously it won't be next week, but the following week when I get back from the dark sky trip, I do have an announcement to share with you guys as well, which I am really looking forward to doing. So definitely tune in for that. For a recommendation this week, I can really only give one recommendation this week. And there's a lot of different things I could recommend, because I've got some really cool media in my life right now that I could share with you guys. But one thing stands out in particular, and it's this week's new episode of Bob's Burgers. So hear me out. First of all, if you haven't seen Bob's Burgers, what are you doing? If you enjoy adult humor that's pretty family friendly for the most part, and really well animated, excellently voice acted. The voice actors on that show are phenomenal. I'm a big fan of H. John Benjamin's work. Kristen Shaw does Luis, obviously. A lot of great voices on that show. But this week's episode in particular is titled, I believe it's Burger of the Night, which is the song that is sung. As you know, there's a lot of musical numbers on Bob's Burgers. If you ever watch, you would know. But I was really, really able to relate with how Bob was feeling this week, because without any spoilers, he really experienced in a different way something that a lot of us astronomers do. So I highly encourage you to go watch it. Like I say, it's the most recent episode to release. So I believe the air date was last Sunday, which would have been the 17th. So you can watch it on Hulu, if you have Hulu, or, find a place to stream it online, obviously, legally, of course. But anyway, check that out. Let me know what you think. I absolutely loved it. I had the song stuck in my head for days. It's still stuck in my head. And it's a really great episode. So let me know what you think. So guys, that's going to do it for this week's episode. I am really going to miss you next week, but I'll be back very, very soon, and we're going to have some really exciting news to share. So I'm definitely looking forward to doing that. I want to take a moment to first thank my wife for joining me on the amazing Milky Way trip that we got to go on this past weekend. I love you. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I just hope that you'll come again very soon. So also want to say thank you once more to all of our Patreon members, both new and old. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for supporting the show day in and day out, always being there for myself and everyone else who is a member of the group. You guys are the best. If you want to join the best astronomy community in the world, you can do that at patreon.com/the Astrocast. I might be a little bit biased, but I really do believe that. So thank you so much for listening to the Astrocast this week. I am your host, Drew, and as always, clear sky.